Welcome to the Sultans of Sales podcast. I'm your host, Jameel Pendleton. My friends call me Jay. Today on the show, I am super thrilled to bring to you Dr. Kevin Foley from Memphis, Tennessee. Dr. Foley is a professor of neurosurgery and orthopedic surgery and biomedical engineering at the University of Tennessee Health Science Center in Memphis. He is the chairman of the Sims Murphy Clinic, director of complex spine surgery, director of the Spine Fellowship Program for Department of Neurosurgery, and medical director of the Medical Education and Research Institute, also known as the Mary. Dr. Foley received his Doctor of Medicine at UCLA, where he later then completed his neurosurgery residency. Following residency, Dr. Foley served in the United States Army Medical Corps as Assistant Chief Neurosurgery at Brooke Army Medical Center in San Antonio, Texas, and as well as Chief of Neurosurgery at Tripler Army Medical Center in Honolulu, Hawaii. Then Chief of Neuro and Chairman of the Residency Program at Walter Reed Medical Center in Washington, D.C. So just a fantastic, these names, these institutions, and Dr. Foley's just had a lot of different experiences throughout the country, as well as running a full-time surgery practice. He is actively involved in research, minimally invasive spine surgery, disc regeneration, image-guided spine surgery, and robotics. He's authored more than 35 book chapters and over 125 scientific journal publications. He is the inventor of many medical devices and biologics, many of which that I have personally represented. And so thank you for that. More than 150 patents issued, and in 2019 was honored by AANS with the prestigious Cushing Award, Technical Excellence and Innovation in Neurosurgery. Wow. What a background. Thank you so much for joining. When I started this podcast 6 months ago, I didn't think that we would get to this point to have Dr. Kevin Foley on the show. So thanks for joining and welcome.
Hey, Jay, it's my pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. And one of the things we've talked, you and I, kind of prepping for this, and we spoke about what would be a good topic. What's something that you and I could sit here on this Zoom call this afternoon? You've had a long day in surgery, but what's something that would be an interesting subject? And it's the intersection or the nexus of medicine and business. So let's talk about that, because we've lived much different lives. However, there are also many parallels when you think about it, from teams that we might work with to earning trust, right? Differently, but also together. I've worked with surgeons, and there's an element of trust because there's that shared common goal, and it's all about the patient and the outcomes. Can you talk about your experience working with industry and however you'd like to share through the course of your career?
Yeah, I'd be glad to. And I think, given your audience, it's an appropriate topic. So I've obviously been very busy as a neurosurgeon and educator, but I've also had a passion for moving things forward in the field. And a lot of that has taken the form of inventing things. Believe it or not, I'm now up to 175 patents. So
Wow.
I like to say it's my hobby. And with that effort, I have been involved in creating entities, partnering with entities, business entities, to take things that I've envisioned and bring them to market so that they go from more than just an idea to practical application, to try to improve surgery and make patients' lives better, much as you talk earlier in this podcast.
You cut out there just for a second, but you said much that you talked about, and then I kind of lost you, unfortunately.
Oh, sorry. I'm not sure I cut out yet. The screen froze a little bit. Yeah, I saw an image of a frozen J there for a little bit. But the point was that, I've worked with businesses and startups to take these notions from just an idea to something practical that
Yes.
can actually be used for patient care to make the field better, but ultimately to make patients better.
Mm-hmm. And what is that something that you thought about early on? I mean, you've got a mind for obviously the biomedical engineering, and obviously this must be a passion. It sounds like there's something that you really enjoy this process, because it is. I can't even imagine how much extra work that comes from that, in addition to all the other things treating patients takes out of your day.
So it is a passion, and I like to create things that fix problems or address issues that I find in my practice.
Mm-hmm.
I've practiced neurosurgery now for several years. I finished my residency in '85 at UCLA, so I've been at this for a while, and I'm still actively practicing. I just got out of the OR today.
It's awesome.
And operate, several days a week, and see clinic a couple days a week, and stay active. But in the course of taking care of people and practicing neurosurgery and spine surgery, if you keep your eyes open, you find things that perhaps can be improved, perhaps can be done better, and those are things that lead me to create,
Yes.
to try to better what I'm doing.
And that's it. It's what happens in the OR, and I think that innovation happens when we work together, right? Not to say that a surgeon couldn't completely do this on their own, but I know that a company probably would be a different path if we didn't engage the clinical aspect of what's happening in the operating room. And you mentioned that earlier, solving problems. I mean, there's a lot of ideas out there, but if you're not solving a problem and making something better, right, then what are you doing, right? I mean, it's not a question. I thrilled to hear more about the process, having worked for large companies, and now I'm with a very small one. So you've worked with a lot of these companies from a small state to greater. What maybe some things you can share for the audience and for me personally.
Sure. So I worked years and years ago with a young engineer out in Southern California, and created a radiolucent retractor for spine. Mm-hmm. This was several decades ago. He was an aerospace engineer by training and had expertise in carbon fiber. Wow. And so we built, I believe, the first carbon fiber retractor. And moved on to working with a small startup here in Memphis, Danik Medical. When I first started working with Danik, literally the company was located in a storefront, in a strip mall, and had tremendous fun and success innovating with that team of people. And of course, most people know Danik eventually merged with Sophomore to form Sophomore Danik, and then the entity was purchased by Medtronic. So I've also worked with a large company, Medtronic, and worked with Invasive when Invasive was a startup, and now Invasive's a large company, and have worked with a significant number of small startups. Well, I have experience, Jay, from scratch, from working with smaller entities to working with large corporate entities.
That's awesome. Any similarities? I mean, they're drastically different, but are there?
Well, I mean, they're in my experience, they're all focused on accomplishing their mission, right? And you have more resources to accomplish those things when you become one of the bigger entities. But really, in my experience, the ones that are successful stay focused on their mission, and stay focused on partnering with physicians to do exactly what you and I talked about earlier, to take care of patients. Ultimately, right. It's about creating better outcomes for patients. And if you lose sight of that, at least in my experience, you tend to falter. If you keep that squarely in mind, you are much more likely to be successful.
And I think that's why it's so important. Our relationship with clinicians, with surgeons, is that we have to keep in mind that at the end of the day, it's always about that. That's the North Star, is improving patients' lives or surgeons' lives, which then indeed could help improve patients' lives, right? So there's innovation, there's pockets of innovation and different ways to approach.
So there are surgeons, as you know, who have created their own businesses, but by and large, we don't have time to do that as surgeons. Not if we're going to stay engaged in taking care of patients.
Right.
Patient care, whether it's neurosurgery or orthopedic surgery, the two fields I know from spine, it's a daunting task, and it's an engaging task, right? The time demands tremendous amounts of your time and attention and devotion. And so what's worked for me, may not be the best way for everyone, is to partner with good people who have the organizational skills and the financial skills and the manufacturing and engineering skills to take those ideas and turn them into reality.
And I want to, sometimes when I'm talking to maybe a family member or a friend who doesn't really understand the business of what we do, the explanation about why I need to be in an operating room when I'm not a medical, healthcare practitioner, but also why we work together with surgeons. And, just to clear the air there, I mean, there are some, I would say, unethical things that happen in any industry. I got a lot of friends in real estate. I got a lot of friends in finance. It happens. But as you said, when we connect and we work together for that common goal, it's amazing what can happen. The innovation that you've brought to this industry is a great example. Can you comment on that? I mean, what?
Sure. I mean, I don't think the medical device industry in the U.S. would be what it is today. I mean, we lead the world, and I don't think that would be the size and scope, right, and have the degree of success it has had without physician industry interaction. As you said, you have friends, family members who wonder, well, what are you doing in the OR, Jay? You're not a doctor. You're not a scrub nurse or a tech. But you have business expertise. You have sales expertise. I've watched your podcast.
Wow,
it's an engaging podcast.
Thank you.
I'm not a salesperson. I don't have the training. Don't have the experience. But I have a lot of medical experience, and I have that knack for creating things, and being able to partner with the Jays of the world has allowed me to see those ideas come to fruition. And I think that's the most efficient way, maybe the best way for devices to be brought to market. That relationship and interaction that is allowed and can be successfully carried out is a great thing. Now, you also mentioned the dark side, right? And every industry has its dark side, as you said, and so that's something that I warn other physicians about. I give lectures on medical entrepreneurship, and I speak to my colleagues and some of the trainees about the dangers of that dark side, and understanding what things like the anti-kickback statute mean, understanding that the fact that you're doing surgery and using implants isn't a business for you. You're providing patient care. That's not something you should be paid for. And if money is changing hands for inducement, right, for people to buy business, that's absolutely improper, and it's a good way for the industry to get in trouble and surgeons to get in trouble, right, and inappropriately so. That being said, the fact that some of those bad activities have gone on and continue to go on shouldn't cast a pall on a legitimate, productive, good physician industry interaction. And I think sometimes the bad actors who make the headlines give a bad name to the whole notion of this collaborative effort. And that's a shame, because I don't think that, as I mentioned earlier, there would be near the progress without that collaboration.
That's so well said. It would not be near the progress. And you mentioned earlier about the US and the innovation that we have, and we lead the world by leaps and bounds there because of the interaction that is completely above board and allowed for industry and physicians like yourself, Dr. Foley, to create the next greatest and best. And then it's going to continue to evolve, right? The iterations as they are performed in operating rooms. And so that's, again, back to the OR. And that's what's so exciting about my role. I get to see kind of some new things that are happening, and we're trying to improve spine surgery for.
Right. You can speak specifically to this, right? You and I talked about this a little bit last night about your latest venture, right? But this is not to advertise for you, Jay. No. It's apt, right? It's pertinent to what you and I are talking about today. The fact that you're working with a technology to improve visualization, using such things as your devices in tubes and other small retractors to try to improve minimally invasive surgery, which of course is something that warms my heart and interests me. But it's that kind of activity that lets us progress, that lets us make these surgeries better and safer, more effective. And as you well know, not every effort leads to a home run or even a single, right?
That's right.
But if you don't try, if you don't continue to innovate and try to improve things, then you never improve. It's like never swinging at a ball. You'll never hit a home run.
You'll never hit. You might strike out.
You'll strike out a lot, but you'll hit some home runs.
Exactly. Wayne Gretzky talks, miss 100% of the shots you don't take. And that's just I've stuck onto that quote. It's one of my favorites, because he's right. And you're right that it seems like there's something to be learned about the process. Win or lose, home run or strikeout, it's the process by which your goal is to improve surgery, to improve patient outcomes. Then that's going to lead to good things, maybe lessons, maybe you'll learn something that you can apply on the next opportunity.
You always learn. My old chief at UCLA, Dr. Stern, used to say, good judgment comes from experience, and experience comes from bad judgment. And that he used that to refer to surgery, but it pertains to life.
Yes, it does. And I would say there's a lot of parallels that I've learned over the years, standing in operating rooms with surgeons like yourself, that are they're humbling. There's no room for error. There's no margin for error in this industry. And I feel grateful to be able to stand in those rooms and to provide a service. It's funny, we didn't really talk about this, but medical device sales is what we do. The sale is part of it, but I would say more important is the service that comes after the sale, and providing value. That's ultimately what I feel sales reps do and interoperative consultants do. What are your thoughts on the role of that rep in the room?
Well, I mean, they're essential. The reality is that in most ORs, you've got good folks, but some of them are not as experienced as you'd like. And there are so many things to do and so many things to keep track of, that if someone with experience is there to help, it is a very, very positive influence, again, on having a good outcome. A good example is when you're wanting to perform a procedure that requires implants. Someone's got to get the implants there. Someone's got to make sure that the right implants are there. Someone occasionally needs to go run for additional implants when circumstances dictate, right? The surgeon gets in there and says, oh my goodness, I need X, Y, and Z instead of A, B, and C. And so who runs for that stuff? The rep, right? So exactly. a good rep is a very, in my experience, a positive influence on patient care.
That's well said. And it's funny because we mentioned earlier about explaining to family members right over the holidays or whatnot, whenever these conversations come up, what is it exactly that you do in that room? That's actually another analogy that I use. I say, imagine that you're doing a project, a home improvement project, but you're scrubbed in and you can't leave. Obviously, the patient's on the table. When you run out of nails or you need to change course based on the anatomy, based on a lot of different factors, because every surgery is alive and changes, that's a very big value of why that person needs to be there, is to go and help, at that moment, come up with that solution together with the surgeon as the captain of the ship. But there's a lot of people, nurses, scrub tech staff, and we're just kind of part of that wheel, part of that team that helps you and others like you accomplish your surgical goals. And that's why we're there.
Well, as you know, the expertise of those teams in the OR varies. Mm-hmm. If you're with a very experienced team, the rep is not as necessary. If you're with an inexperienced team, someone who's doing they've never done this before. I'm not talking about the surgeon. I'm talking about the scrub tech and the circulator and the like, the other people who are in that OR to help this task be accomplished. In circumstances like that, I'll say to my rep, look, I want you to stay right by this table, and I need you to show my helper here what the steps of this surgery are. Because if I have to stop doing surgery to walk to that back table to get the next instrument or the next implant, it's unbelievably inefficient. Yeah, I can't imagine being able to do things as efficiently with an inexperienced scrub team in the OR in the absence of that rep.
That's interesting. Well, we can maybe live to see that. There's repless models. There's all these things that gets thrown out.
I know. I don't think it's a good idea. I mean, and now in with COVID, as you know, we're short-staffed. Right? We don't have enough scrubs. We don't have enough circulators, and I've seen the reps step up.
It's interesting too, because you mentioned the inefficiency, right? If you're right over the nerve and you're obviously doing something very important for the procedure, but also very dangerous. It's just, I would say that not only inefficient for you to have to stop that, compartmentalize, and then walk to the back table, but it's dangerous, or it just introduces another variable of risk that could be mitigated, right? With someone who's 5, 6, 7 steps ahead, knowing the surgical plan. Not only that, but knowing you, Dr. Foley, and your, let's say, preferences or things that you like, things that you don't like. Don't hand him this instrument. Hand him this instrument because this is what he uses to, right, get to the end plate, or whatever it is. That's where I see the value adds that we can bring to the room. And this isn't supposed to be a commercial for reps.
No, I know.
Part of the conversation.
It gets back into that, physician industry collaboration. So
that's it.
I'm not going to name names, but my rep is a great rep,
Sure.
but he's a cheapskate, and doesn't buy me lunch, doesn't buy me dinner. I don't want him to.
Yeah.
Okay. In other words, there's no money changing hands there.
Right.
But oh my God, is he essential to what I do day to day? And you know that in sales, you're a sales guy, especially with recurring sales, you have to have a relationship, right? Well,
yes.
If you bring value, as a good rep does, to that OR, it's hugely helpful to the surgeon. Absolutely builds that relationship, which absolutely helps you to maintain your sales.
Yeah, and it's a very interesting relationship too, because we mentioned earlier at the top of the show that we have a shared goal, and right, a very smart man who I know mentioned coined the phrase. I don't know if he was the first to say it, but he's the first that I heard say it. Pat Miles mentioned that the good surgery is good business, and so that's kind of how I have always managed my territory. I'm not worried about the money. I'm worried about taking care of my surgeons and providing value, and all that other stuff. It's a byproduct. It's always been. And, for you, I mean, having not been in the surgeon's shoes and all the things that from a liability standpoint, from just whatever, but I'm really trying to get to the innovation that happens in the operating room, right? Because let's say for a new product and you're trying something out, right? We've talked about this. I even heard your speech at the Seattle Science Foundation, which was fantastic, by the way, about the REMI, about the adoption curve of new technology, because you have to kind of, I would imagine, trust in yourself and your training to try new things. And that's where innovation happens. Can you talk about that process of like, when do you, I'm not really doing a poor job of asking this question, and I apologize. I'm just trying to think about where you're at as a surgeon, taking care of a patient, but then wanting to innovate at the same time. And can you talk about that?
Sure. So you have to, you have to be absolutely certain that you're going to take very good care of that patient. right? So the Rummy robot's a good specific example. We don't talk theoretically. So, I've obviously been putting in pedicle screws for decades and know how to do that pretty well.
Right.
And I
say so.
I can do it without the robot. So, and I can do it without three-dimensional imaging. I can do it without navigational guidance, stereotactic guidance in particular. And so I know that I'm going to take good care of that patient. If something isn't working right, if I'm not comfortable with that, I'm still going to be able to take care of my patient. And of course, when I'm talking to patients about using new technologies like that, I disclose this to them. I say, we're going to be using a new robot on you. And I felt comfortable doing this, and here's why. But, if you don't, we don't have to, number one. And then number two, I'm going to take good care of you. I will make sure that everything that's done surgically is done correctly. So it's a matter of you're not experimenting on people. They're still your patient. You have huge duty to them to make sure that things are done properly. Though, in my experience, Jay, we talked about this, the innovation. So it goes from an idea to prototypes. One of the reasons I started the MARI, the Medical Education and Research Institute, was to allow new devices that were being created and improved to be used on humans where no one was at risk.
Right.
So you can make mistakes in the cadaver lab and you're not going to hurt anyone, right? And importantly, you can refine devices to a point where they're good to go. And this goes beyond regulatory approval. Now, obviously, FDA is going to make you jump through hoops appropriately to get a device on the market, but you, as a surgeon innovator, still owe it to your patients to make sure everything goes fine. And so, at least for me personally, I'll never take something from the lab to the OR without confidence that it's going to work well. And if there are issues, I'm going to be able to compensate for them, but I'm still going to be able to pull off that surgery and get the result that the patient desires and that I desire.
That's great. Thank you so much for that. It's helpful to understand the psychology of the new technology and how that hangs in the balance of treating your patients. And so thank you for the wonderful, honest answer. Do you have time I want to be respectful for your time. Do you have time for one more question?
Sure.
So we've connected on LinkedIn and we've never met personally. I look forward to that day, but it's been really fun to get to know you through this channel. And I just wanted to spend the last few minutes talking about social media, right? It's a common question that I get. It's a common topic because it seems to be very new and very relevant for growth for the industry, but also for surgeons. And I'm just curious about that, just for you in your practice and kind of how you work with some of the topics we've talked about earlier with industry. Just kind of wanted to get your thoughts about this platform and that I'm grateful for.
So I like LinkedIn. And I'm not hugely active on LinkedIn, but I think I mentioned to you when we had our little discussion last night about, hey, what are we going to talk about?
Right.
What will be interesting? What will be topical? So I'm not on Facebook. I'm not on Twitter. And the reason I never went on Facebook is I was concerned that a patient would would want to friend me, and if I said no or turned down that friend request, I'd disappoint that patient inadvertently. And so I just decided, I'm just not going to be faced with that dilemma. Now, there's huge value to these networking platforms, right? And
big time.
And the ability to spread the word on social media. So some of my more social media savvy colleagues are all over Facebook and Twitter and the like, right? And kudos to them. We at SEMS have a full-time employee whose job is to talk to the docs and post things on Facebook and Twitter. So it's done for us through SEMS Murphy's account. But I have a personal account on LinkedIn, again, because of my interest in business and that nexus between, practicing medicine and working in a business environment. And I have found that to be valuable. Sounds like an advertisement for LinkedIn. I have nothing to do with it.
No, neither do I.
Not conflicted at all, but maybe you mentioned just a few moments ago that that's how you and I met.
It is. And interestingly, you said something to me when we were prepping for this, that you said, Jay, I don't, never met you, but I feel like I know you a little bit more than just someone who would reach out and call you up. And I just think that right there, first off, it's amazing that we're here in almost 2022, but we are here, whether it was COVID, whether it was just kind of a lot of variables. We are now communicating on different channels, and it's just truly amazing. I
know it's interesting, Jay. I think I told you, I could tell, listening to your podcasts, looking at what you write on LinkedIn, what you post, I can tell you're a good person, and I could tell that we had some similar interests, some similar outlooks, and that is something I think that is a positive for those kinds of interaction, because otherwise, we might not be talking.
No, 100%. And that's what's so amazing, because I've personally represented and sold many of your products. Again, thank you. And
see, I didn't know that.
Yes, and yet we would have never had an opportunity to meet. I'm in Texas, you're in Tennessee. Just the fact that I mentioned this earlier on another channel, but or just another, I think a video, but it's just it's taking the cold call, which is if someone calls you up, you probably get solicited often, and you don't have a lot of time. Surgeons, as I know, I've worked with you all for a long time. The time is not something that you have an abundance of. But the fact that we were able to connect, can text one another, can call, and have this wonderful interaction. Hopefully people learn something, whether it's a surgeon that's interested in maybe bringing a device to market, some of the things you said, or a sales representative, right? That's afraid of posting on LinkedIn or whatever it is. We're providing guidance and experiences that we've each had separately, but also together. And I just think that's just such a what a gift, right? Wow, how amazing for us to have this podcast and this time together, and time that I'm grateful for, Dr. Foley. Really am.
Well, it's been my pleasure. It's been great to talk to you, Jay, and very nice to meet you.
Yes, likewise. We hadn't ever seen face to face either, so this is special too. So thank you so much, Dr. Foley. Thank you for all of you for tuning in to this wonderful episode of the Sultans of Sales podcast. Tune in every Tuesday. And thank you again for joining.
My pleasure. Have a good evening.
Take care. Bye-bye.